How's it going? This is Jerry here. Not sure if you saw the prior video, but what we have here is a surveillance camera. It's a Grandstream. That doesn't really matter too much, but it has a problem. It doesn't like to power on. Let me show you. I'm going to take the adapter here and watch what happens when I plug it in. See that little power LED just flashes on and off. That's it. That's all it does. Clearly there's a problem here with getting it powered up. Now, I've already taken this thing apart and I've already ordered the parts for what I think is faulty, but I put it back together just so that we can have the full experience. So first of all, this little green thing, I'm going to go ahead and pull that out and put it in my little cup over here. And then this lens also needs to come off. So for that, there's a little lock hole there which is holding the lens tight. Just loosen that a little bit. Don't want to take it out, just loosen it. And then this whole lens just unscrews. Now before I go ahead and continue unscrewing that, I have caps for it right here. So let's go ahead and cap it up just to protect it and make sure we're not destroying the lens. Alright, I have another cap for here. Should just pop right on there. I'll put this in this box. Then I also want to protect this. This is actually the most important part to protect. If only I can screw it on there. There we go. Now, the funny thing is, they have that little sticker there. Warranty void if removed. Okay. And there's a screw under there. So their logic is if you have to rip that up to get to the screw, your warranty is void. But check this out. The other side of this does not have such a sticker, and I can open up this side of it without opening that side of it, therefore never destroying that sticker. Just kind of a flaw, but let's go ahead and open it up. Now this just kind of pulls off like that. And it's plugged in a few places here. But see, that board just pops right out. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it. And let's move that somewhere else. Okay. Let's get a little bit more light here. Now I have to disconnect these. It's a little tricky. How did I do this before? So, if I remember right, I removed it from here. We just kind of pop that little thing out a little bit. That loosens the ribbon cable. Then we have to remove this. And then we have to remove this. Okay, so that little front part, let's put that out of the way. So now we're left with the main circuitry. Now what I found is this chip right here. If I can get my camera to focus, it has some signs of, I don't know, flaws. Just definitely looks suspicious. Something happened there. And if you look closely, if my camera will focus, it has a label MB6S. When you look that up, that is a bridge rectifier. So basically it converts AC current into DC current. And that's the only thing that I can find physically wrong with the board, or any of this for that matter. Now, I already have the new parts here, and actually I have 50 of them, just in case. But I only need that one, and just in case that does not fix it, there's another one right on the other side of it there. So if I replace this and it still has a problem, then I'm going to replace that one as well. Now the problem is I cannot get to that side. Well, at least not that easily. So I'm just going to start with that one, which is clearly the only culprit I see. So we're getting ready to remove that. And my soldering iron, I have it set to 700, warming up right now. Now you probably see this roll of solder back here. We're not going to be using that. That's higher temp. But especially for the purpose of removing this chip, I have some lower temp lead-based solder here. Stuff over there is lead-free, much higher temp. So I don't have any actual desoldering alloy. That's definitely ideal for this, but I don't have any. But I do have this. That's the lowest temp I have. And I have this solder wick. And I also have some flux, some rosin flux, and a little brush to help spread that flux. And a pair of tweezers to help move that chip around. So the iron is warmed up. Let's see if we can remove this. Let's get you over here a little bit. This is going to be an interesting experience for me because I have never ever worked with surface mount before. Now surface mount is basically just when it does not go through a hole in the board. It's just soldered directly to the surface of the board. Let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to take this brush and just kind of rub it all in that flux there. Now ideally there's better types of flux that you could be using, but you can never use too much. So I'm just going to get a lot of flux on this brush here. It's better to use liquid. Unfortunately, I just don't have any liquid flux right now. But flux is your friend. Flux is used to clean it up and to just make things work. Gonna really get a lot of flux on there. Okay. I don't think I've pointed this out, but I also have a solder sucker here. So, solder sucker. Let's actually back up a little bit. So, I just pull this thing down, and when I press that button, it just does a quick little suck. So, before I go ahead and try to suck the old solder off though, we want to add a little bit of fresh flux to it. What that'll do, it'll basically just loosen it up and just get it a lot easier to remove. Because whatever solder is already on there, it's just old. So here we go. I'll hold the iron on there for a second. Then I'm going to add a little bit of solder. Okay, it doesn't matter if it connects like that. I mean, we're going to be sucking it off anyway. No pun intended. Alright, now we're going to get the other side of it. Same deal, just add a little bit of solder. And again, this is low temp solder as opposed to whatever might already be on there. Just makes it a lot easier to try to remove it. Alright, so now this is where the solder sucker comes in. I'm going to charge it, and I'm going to try to release that. It may have gotten it. We'll see. Now we get this side. Oh, hope if I pull it down first. So this is where the wick comes in handy. We're going to come in here. We're just going to stick this on there. Actually, let me clean the tip off a bit first. And this should draw in whatever solder is left behind. You know what? Let me add some flux. But I'll always use more flux. Actually, let's do this different. I'm going to take a little screwdriver. Rather than using the brush, I'm just going to stick it on there like that. And again, there's much better types of flux to use, but it still works. Get a nice little blob on there. And use the iron to just combine it with the solder wick and pull off whatever solder might be left. Okay, it's wanting to be stubborn, but what I'm going to do now, I'm going to come in with a pair of tweezers and just try to kind of tug on it a little bit, not too much, just a little bit as I heat up one side and try to pull that side off. It lifted. Don't want to lift the pads with it though, just want to get the chip. Okay, let's come in on the other side. Ideally, you want to get both of those at the same time. There we go. We have it off. Clean the solder tip. Let's retin it real quick. Actually, I'm going to retin it a couple of times. Okay, and then I stick it right back in there. Now, we have the chip off of there. We got a little bit of a mess behind there though, so what I'm going to do is add a little bit more flux. Again, flux is used for cleaning. Kind of smear it on there a little bit. Alright. And we come back with the soldering iron and the wick, and we remove as much of that as we can. Just kind of drag it across there with both the iron and the wick, with the iron on top of the wick. Okay. Another thing you're going to probably want is some alcohol wipes. I unfortunately do not have that, so I just have paper towel. I'm just going to use that and clean up as much as I can there. But yeah, typically you're going to want some actual alcohol, not just any alcohol too. It has to be the right kind. I don't have these specs handy right now. What kind do you need to be looking for? But there are certain types you should be using, which I just do not have handy right now. Alright, you could probably use a little bit more cleanup. So, the little bit of solder wick that I used, I'm just going to trim it off, because I don't want to use that used part there. And probably a little bit more actually. So that I have fresh wick there. And on top of that, I'm going to dip that into the flex a little bit. Now, most of the time this stuff comes pre-flexed, but I like to add some, you know, just in case. Just smear a little bit on there on both sides. Again, flux is your friend. You can never have too much. And we're going to go at it one more time to get that off. Alright, let's try to get the rest of that off. And again, we're going to make a mess again, but that's just the flux doing its job. Now, if you use some of the desoldering alloy, which is really recommended for this, then you're going to want to use a bit more. I mean, a bit more flux, more solder wick, and you really want to get that stuff all the way off of there. But since I'm using just basic solder for this, it's not as important. Now, I got that taken care of. And we want to add flux again. Smear it on there. And you definitely don't want to damage those pads on the board, or you are pretty much screwed. I'm actually going to push that little blob off to the side and maybe use it later. Okay. Now comes the new stuff. And I got this whole thing of 50 of them. Okay. Now we're ready to place the new component on there. Got it right here. And the orientation is very important. Now, in this case, I know the orientation, but you're just going to want to know how the original chip was before you do this. Get it into place here. And make sure it is nice and lined up with the pads. Okay. Something like that. Now there's different ways to do this, but in my case, I have literally never done this before. So, from all the stuff I've been watching, the best way is to get it in position, and then get a little bit of solder, just very little bit on the iron, and then hold it down, and then just get one pin first. Just one of them, while making sure it's nice and lined up, which I just completely screwed up. nice and lined up. Almost. Maybe. There we go. It's just about there. Okay. Let's go for it. First pin. If I don't screw it up again. I think I need more. And I'm screwing it up as I go. Let's do this. Try to push it while I put the soldering iron on. Okay. Almost there. Let's pull it from this side as I heat it up again. Oh, now I gotta push it back. Up, up. Almost there. And that's about it. Actually, doesn't look like too clean of a solder joint. So because of that, I'm going to add a little bit more flex. Oh yeah, I forgot I had that little blob there I was hanging on to. It's on there, but just didn't really have enough flux to really go too clean. That should do it. Let's hit that one more time while I hold it down. Okay. It really wants to move around on me. It's a really small chip. Now, let's get the opposite corner. We get a little bit more solder on there. And we come in at the opposite corner. And since this is a smaller chip, we can just go ahead and get the rest of them while we're at it. Now you can get kind of two at a time, and don't worry if it bridges like that. We can come back and fix that later. In a way, it's actually kind of good. Now I'm just going to give it a few seconds to cool back down. Now I'm going to get the other side. Again, both of them. Now I'm going to clean the iron off and then come back and just tap this other side again to pull some of it off. Maybe. I guess more flux. Flux definitely is not going to hurt this. Okay. Now we come back with a clean iron and just go over it again. There we go. Bridge is gone. On the other side, also looks like it has no bridge. Okay. It's not the neatest, but I'd say, for the first time, at least I didn't completely screw it up. But that side could use a little more touching, but I'm going to clean it first. So again, we get our little paper towel, And again, it definitely helps to have some rubbing alcohol here. And not just any kind. There's certain types you should be using for this, but I'm kind of cheap. Now, in the end, once you're completely finished, you definitely want to clean it up really good. But for now, I'm just cleaning it up so I can see what I'm doing. And that side does need a little more touch, a little more love. I'm questioning whether they really line up or not. It does look a little bit crooked. I definitely could have done a better job at that. But it is all soldered. And once I clean this up real good, it's going to be about time to actually test it. And having a lot of flux on there is pretty much, just liquid, which could potentially short circuit things. And you really don't want that to happen. That's why you really want to clean it up. That's also why you don't want to be cheap like me, and you need to make sure you get the right kind of cleaning stuff. Now, although it's not that clean of a joint, it, strictly speaking, should work. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there is a solder joint there. It is crooked, but it is a solder joint. And it should conduct just fine. And don't worry, that little piece there is part of the same trace. So, now I'm kind of ready for a test. Now, before I go ahead and just plug in the power, I'm going to want to make sure that that front lens part is at least plugged in. Let's bring the camera out a little bit. Now, this is really tricky. So make sure this is plugged in here the correct way, of course. Then we make sure this is plugged in to there. And I think that's upside down. Yep. Okay. Now, the tricky part is getting that ribbon cable back in there. And how did I do this last time? Let's flip it over. Oi. That's not going to be easy. Something's wrong here. I think it gets turned around. Yeah. Yep. Now, we have to make sure that this little brown thing is pulled away. And carefully line this up and slide it under without pushing that brown thing back. Oh. Alright, we slide it in as far as we can get it. And Then we slide the brown thing down into place. That holds it down. Okay. Now I'm not going to put the rest of it together as long as everything's plugged in. Now we're going to see what happens. Are you as scared as me? So, prior symptom was that green LED was just turning on and off. Let's see what happens now. Unfortunately, it's doing the same thing. But at least it's not doing something completely different and wrong. That just means what I did not fix the problem. And that opens the door for a whole nother video. We did not have success. It is not a very clean solder. So I guess the next step is come back and try to put another chip on there. And if that still doesn't work, if I get the next chip right and it still doesn't work, then there's the one on the other side, which I will replace next. Over and out.